Sorry. The PowerPoint probably isn't necessary just because they can easily look at that.
Cool.
And we've heard from a bunch of admissions counselors, so I think it would be interesting to hear from you as a student.
Okay, cool, great.
Thank you.
So I'll just kind of give like a brief overview of myself and being at Campbell. And then if you guys have any questions or specific things you want me to talk about, let me know. I also apologize for how I look and being late. Clinic ran late today, so just bear with me as I try to pull myself back together. So basically, I chose to go to Campbell out of all the schools in North Carolina for a couple of reasons. When I was a freshman at State, I remember I went to a meeting and Campbell PA students came, and this was when Rodney was in charge, and he came and he spoke, and I remember I called my mom. I was like, "Hey, Mom, guess what? I'm going to go to Campbell for PA school." And she was like, "Bruh, you just got there. No, you're not." And I was like, but I am. And then over the years and through becoming the president at the pre-PA club, I got to work with so many PA programs, and most of them being in North Carolina. And through that, I just got to see kind of the people that were at Campbell and the way that they cared for the students and their curriculum and how it worked. And also then looking forward to clinical year, how their clinical year was set up in comparison to other schools. So I think now being in the clinical year, that's become my whole world. It's really nice that Campbell allows you to go anywhere in the state. So when you go to your clinical year, you get to pick a hub city, and then they will make sure that all of your rotations are within, I think the max they'll have you drive is an hour, but haven't had to drive more than 30 minutes. So your hubs are Charlotte, Raleigh, Buies Creek, Winston-Salem, Boone, Wilmington. There's a couple more and I'm forgetting. So, for me, I was like, well, shoot, let me go to the beach for a year. So I am in Wilmington, in a place I never thought I would be, and getting to experience a new city. And I will say that of all of my classmates and people that I've talked to, being in Wilmington has been fantastic because I'm not in a big city. So when I'm the student, I'm one of the only students. So when I'm in the OR, I'm first assist. When I'm in the clinic, and we're running short, like I'm going to see the patients, and it's just me. And procedures and all of that stuff I get to do first because there's not that many students here. So that's been really a cool experience, just kind of from a clinical perspective from Campbell. And then kind of rewinding, because didactic year feels like it's been forever ago, but it's only been like 8 months, which is crazy. Didactic year, regardless of where you go, is going to be tough. I don't want to not going to sugarcoat it, but also don't want you to think it's impossible. It's definitely possible. It's just a really tough year. So you want to make sure you're going to be in a place where you can be the most successful version of yourself, and you're going to be surrounded by faculty and students that are like-minded and are going to put you in a place to be successful. And from that perspective, Campbell does a fantastic job of that. They focus a lot on how do you balance being a student and being human. PA school has to become a high priority for you, but it also doesn't have to consume your entire life, maybe just like 95% of it, right? But Campbell does a really good job of allowing you to find that balance. And also for the faculty just being so wonderful. You get assigned a faculty advisor, and that's your point person at Campbell. And you can go to them for anything. I mean, they'll give you your phone number. And so when it's, I don't know, noon on a Saturday and you're freaking out about your exam, you can text them. And that might not be the environment that's at every school. So that, I think, is kind of what's been unique to Campbell as a PA program, in addition to just the resources that they have and the people that they have. And the last Campbell plug I'll give you guys is, when I was at NC State, I volunteered at Duke Regional in their emergency department, and every person that I met, from the emergency room providers to the surgeons and whoever would come down for consults, I would ask them, their opinion on PA schools in the area without saying anything about Campbell, because I was there before I got accepted and then after I got accepted. And every single one of them, without fail, told me how much they liked working with Campbell students. So Campbell's reputation precedes them. And when you show up to a clinical rotation and you say, hi, I'm a Campbell PA student, they expect a lot from you, but they also give you so many opportunities because they know how well prepared you are. And I've heard from all of my preceptors how much they love working with Campbell students because they really do prepare you well. So I think that's kind of like my general overview of Campbell. If you guys have specific Campbell questions, I'm happy to answer them. If you want to know more about my pre-PA life and, you know, how my path to becoming a PA, I'm happy to talk about that. I'll kind of let you guys guide this in whatever would be the most helpful for you. I'm really an open book and I'm happy to discuss anything.
So if anyone has questions, feel free to ask. If not, I have a few, so I can go ahead and ask those.
Okay.
All right. So one of the things that drew me to Campbell that I really like is the supportive environment. So can you talk about that a bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So Campbell really is an environment where they're not going to push competition down your throat. And they're actually so like anti-competing with your classmates that nobody talks about grades. Like if you even mention what you got on a test or anything, people are like, what are you doing? Stop talking. Like nobody talks about grades. So that's really, really nice. And then with that also, I mean, your classmates, like you're with them so much that they like truly become family, which I know is like a super cliche, cheesy thing to say. But I will say, I mean, like I have met just like lifelong friends from being at Campbell and even now being with preceptors, talking to them about their PA school experience. Like you do, the friends you make in PA school, like call it trauma bonding, whatever, like you do become super close with them. And you have that support of not only your classmates, but with your faculty as well. And like I said, the reputation of Campbell is just so strong that wherever you go, people want to support you because they know the education that you have received. So I would say it is one of the most supportive environments. It really is a family environment. I think a lot of the faculty takes on kind of like a mama bear role, if you will, and really does absolutely everything they can to make sure you are the most successful provider you can be. And even with that, I've had classmates that have gone through life experiences that have had to pull them away from PA school or have them had to take a back seat, and a lot of programs would have just dismissed the student, but Campbell has gone above and beyond to make sure that they can continue with their education despite the challenges that are being thrown at them from their life. So I think it's a really cool thing to see that such an amazing school, such a prestigious school is willing to work with students and also remembers that like you're human. And when life happens, they're there to allow you to like live through that and still be a student, if that makes any sense. So I think those are the most supportive things.
Yeah, that was perfect. Thank you. Someone asked, what's the most challenging part of didactic year and clinical year?
So I think I have a very opposite opinion of what most people will tell you. So take what I say with a grain of salt, but also take what everybody else is going to tell you with a grain of salt. So for didactic year, I think it's pretty universal, is that you're just learning how to learn. The amount of information that you get and the volume that you get is like nothing you've ever had before. Somebody gave me an analogy. It's not the fire hose, an analogy when I went to PA school that was like, I don't know how many of you have had organic chemistry with Dr. Sandberg, but it's like taking 5 Dr. Sandberg classes at one time. It's just a lot. And there's nothing that can prepare you for that. So I think in the beginning of didactic, it's learning how to learn. It's learning, how do I take all of this information and make sense of it? How do I find what's clinically relevant to me? So I think that in didactic year is the hardest part. I would say, I think that's the biggest challenge in didactic. I can't really think of anything else that was super tough, except for just it can be hard, like socially, when you look around and you see all your friends that are working and going on all these trips and doing these fun things, and you're still a student. So that can definitely be a little bit challenging at times, but it's just one of those things that you put your head down, you remind yourself why you're there. And those are things that I don't think I really thought would be challenging like ahead of time. And they're definitely overcomable. And it's not, I don't know if overcomable is a word. Excuse me, I'm tired. But it's all of those things are definitely things that you can work through. So that's didactic year. I personally thought that the beginning of clinical year was hands down, without a doubt, the most challenging time of my entire education. Beyond anything at NC State, beyond anything at Campbell and didactic year. And nobody told me that. I feel like everybody says, oh, clinical year is so great. It's so easy. You get to take a break. And I felt the most fish out of water I've ever felt. Granted, I started with internal medicine in the middle of the Delta spike. So I was thrown into the ICU and didn't feel like I knew anything. I also went in with the expectation that this was going to be so much better than didactic. And when it was more overwhelming and I was more stressed and I felt just so lost in it, I wasn't expecting that. So I would say the transition in clinical year is tough. As far as like studying and academics goes, I think it gets easier because now you're starting to get into that repetition. But I mean, you show up and you work at 8-10 hour day, and then you have to study, and then you got to go back and do it the next day. So from that part, clinical year is tough just to adjust to going from this academic sense to, okay, how do we do this in the real world? And it can be frustrating at times because you're going to learn the academic way to do everything. And then you show up in clinic and you tell them how you would do it. And then they're like, we don't do that. And you're like, oh, sorry. Okay. So it's just learning that. I will say now I'm finishing my 7th clinical rotation this week, and it's gotten 20 million thousand times better. I feel more confident. I don't feel like I am drowning every day. You get a hang of it and it gets a lot better. And now I would say this is like the best part of my education because I'm learning so much. I'm getting to actually talk to patients. I'm seeing my interventions working. And even though you're only there for a month, you do get to see that consistency and that continuity of care when people come back for follow-ups and you're like, wow, everything that I've put into this, I'm seeing it pay off. So I think that was the hardest part of clinical year, but clinical year has been one of the most rewarding experiences as well. And I'm happy to expand on anything about clinical year or didactic year as well. And then I'm seeing the other question. What did I do for clinical hours? How many did I have when I applied? Okay, I'll answer that question first. So for my clinical hours, I started as a CNA. So I worked in pediatric home health. And so basically that's like glorified babysitting. If Maxim is still kind of around, it's kind of like Maxim, but I did it in Charlotte through Quality Healthcare. That was the name of the company. And I did that just so I could say, hey, I have experience as a CNA. And then the provider that I grew up with, she started her own practice in Charlotte and I was her medical assistant. So I did that for a year. And then I was like, well, I've only worked in peds, so I should probably get some more experience. So I started working in the step down ICU at Novant Presbyterian in Charlotte. And that's where I think I learned the most medical knowledge, I guess, compared to working in pediatric home health. It was more so just kind of figuring out what your role was in healthcare and how all of the different kind of pieces of healthcare work together, because you would go to the appointments and you could see like how the physical therapy and the occupational therapy mixes in with doctor's appointments and all that kind of stuff. I would say that if you are considering being a CNA, it can be challenging to find a job at first, especially part-time, but take the job in home health, do it for a couple of months, and then get a job in a hospital. Because also when you tell most of the hospital staff that you want to go to PA school or that you're interested in furthering your education, 9 times out of 10, they're going to take you up on that. And they're going to be like, hey, I'm going to do this, come watch. So not only are you going to work, but you're also getting to shadow a little bit and you're getting to see more of the hospital environment. And especially with the nurses, like telling them, hey, I want to go to PA school. Like, I mean, they taught me how to read EKGs before I went to PA school. So that was really cool. So I would definitely, if you can, start with home health. If you can get into a hospital, that's great. Another really good thing to do would be like an ED tech. That's really helpful. And then EMT is also great, but it can be a little bit harder to get your hours because getting a job can be tough. But those are all kind of the big things. And I was a CNA and I was fine. And a little tangent on like you're getting your hours and stuff. Everybody has a different opinion about it. Everybody's going to tell you the best thing to do. But I would say all of my classmates came from so many different walks of their preclinical work, and every single one of us is doing fine. And we all bring something different. And it's really easy when you're sitting next to the surgical tech that knows absolutely everything about anatomy and about how the OR works to be like, whew, I did the wrong thing. But also realizing that even though you may feel like you don't have anything that you brought with you, you do. And knowing that like, once you get to that place in PA school, like you're there for a reason. And that your clinical experience is just as valuable as somebody else's. So try to be careful with the comparison on that part. And then what specialties do you do for rotations? So you have your core rotations, and then you have 2 electives, and you have 1 rotation that's called contextualizing health, where you learn about the social determinants of health and different ways that you can kind of combat that as a provider. So talking about different ways to prescribe medications that can be a little bit cheaper, talking about things like expedited partner treatment for STDs, and just how you can provide care to people that may have a harder time getting to it. And so it's really cool because it's just about, here's a bunch of resources that you can take with you as a provider. Your core your core rotations, you have internal medicine. So that's like on the floor in the hospital. Every place is a little bit different, but you're going to see a lot of like heart failure, pneumonias, broken hips, things like that. And then if you're lucky, you'll be in the ICU with COVID and you'll see just the craziest things that you can imagine. Then you have emergency med, pretty self-explanatory. Psychology or psychiatry, and that can be very different. You can do inpatient or outpatient. It's still considered a core rotation. Pediatrics, women's health, family medicine, and surgery. So those are your core rotations that everybody will do. You also have a primary care rotation that can be either urgent care, an additional psych rotation, an additional pediatric rotation, or an additional family medicine rotation, but it has to be primary care focused. So that's kind of like the additional one that doesn't have a specific title. It's kind of like whatever you want it to be. And then your electives, Campbell has a list of electives in literally any specialty imaginable, and you pick from that, and then they set you up with that. So that is the rotations. And then I was actually not a certified medical assistant. So in North Carolina, and I could be wrong, this is from 3 years ago now that I was looking at this, but the legislation, you didn't have to be a certified medical assistant to work as one, as long as the supervising physician was willing to train you and accept your liability. So I was never went to like medical assistant school or class, but my provider taught me everything I needed to know. And so I functioned as a MA.
And then, you're right about that, because I'm a medical assistant, but I don't have my CMA degree. So it's still current. You're still right.
Yeah, okay. So if you have somebody that's willing to teach you, then don't worry about it. And then did you have to decide between the Master of Physician Assistant Practice and Public Health program at Campbell? If so, what led you to your decision? So there are a couple dual degree options at Campbell, which is really nice and something that a lot of PA programs don't offer. So you have your dual degree in Masters of Public Health and in Clinical Research. For me, I was very torn between doing the public health one, because I was like, wow, this would be really cool to learn about all of the things that, kind of lead into healthcare, kind of all those upstream things that we don't necessarily always think about. Ultimately, it became a financial decision for me, in that I didn't necessarily see the financial payout for me to spend another year in school, another year not working, paying another year of tuition just to have some more letters. Now, that's not to say that there's things you can do with that, but when I was looking at it from a financial perspective and how much I was going to pay for PA school in general, I didn't see that it was going to necessarily put an opportunity in front of me that I wouldn't have if just as a PA, if that makes sense. I have classmates that did the public health degree and they love it. But it just wasn't necessarily for me in the sense that I wanted to get out into the workforce. And it wasn't something that was super interesting to me. However, if you want to work in any type of administration, if you want to work at the health department, those kinds of things, then I would think it would be really beneficial. And then for the clinical research side of things, I personally managed to do every extracurricular possible so I didn't have to do research, because that is just not for me. So I stayed very far away from that. But I have some classmates that are like super into research and have published many of papers and are far smarter than I will ever be. And they are doing the clinical research dual degree, and they are doing amazing. And they have no interest in working as a clinical PA. They have every interest in being in research, and it works for them, and they're happy and wonderful. So good for them. But I also could not do research. So those are the two dual degrees at Campbell. What extra opportunities can the MPH dual program give you? So that's kind of what I was saying about a little bit with if you want to work in the health department or if you want to work in administration. I can't necessarily speak to all the opportunities because I didn't go through with it, but I do have classmates that did, so I can ask them if they would be interested in talking to you guys, or if they would be okay with me passing along their email. I'm sure all of them are. They're very nice people. But I would challenge you to look into, what you want to do and if having that extra degree will benefit you. Like I said, if you want to work clinically and you have a specialty that you're interested in, I don't necessarily see where that public health piece is going to set you above and beyond another just master's of physician assistant practice. And I could very well be biased in this because I didn't go through with that program. But if you are interested, I will ask them if I can send their emails. So have Caitlin text me and remind me of that. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't answer the question about my clinical hours. I cannot remember, which is crazy because I feel like these numbers like ruled my life, and Caitlin might remember because I talked to her about this. I think I ended up applying with around 1,700, 1,800.
That's what I was thinking. So I think you're right.
Cool. I did have I guess a decent amount of hours, but also not that many. I mean, I had classmates that had worked for 10 years and they had plenty of hours. So nothing crazy by any stretch. And also remember that when PA schools consider you and look at your application, they are looking at everything. Like, did you come straight from undergrad? Did you take a gap year? How many gap years did you take? What did you do in your gap years? They factor in like just like the human factor, and are not going to expect somebody who came straight from undergrad to come in here with 5,000 hours. And you'll also hear different opinions on this, but I do not think for a second that I was at any disadvantage going straight from undergrad into PA school. I don't think that there is a right way to do it. I don't think there's a wrong way to do it. People that take gap years have great experience, and they learn so much and they grow so much as people. But you also learn and grow through PA school. So I don't feel like at this point going straight through was at any disadvantage. And I think people get on either side of the fence of whatever they did, and then they're like, well, the other one's terrible. And people will say, oh, well, if you don't take a gap year, you just shouldn't. Like, you have to take a gap year. You're not going to be mature enough to go. Or you have people that go straight through and they're like, why would you take all these gap years? That's stupid. Like, that doesn't matter. And no matter when you go, you're going to be great. And gap year, no gap year, don't let people who did either or make you feel like your choice was not the best one for you, because it literally doesn't matter at all.
All right. Do we have any questions from the room here? Yes.
So would you recommend taking genetics? And also, did you refresh your memory on any anatomy and physiology before going to PA school?
So genetics, if any of you know me or were there when I was like my last year as being the president, or if Caitlin has mentioned it, I am a uber type A person, as I'm sure everybody listening or sitting in the room is. So I had like my spreadsheet of like every program in North Carolina and all of their requirements and everything. And so I think there was a program or two that required genetics. And I didn't want just like one class to prevent me from applying. So I did take genetics. Do I think genetics has helped me clinically? No. Do I think no, I really like, I don't think that there was anything specifically from genetics that I'm like, man, I'm so glad I know how to do that. But I also wouldn't not take it, because you would hate for that to be the reason that you can't apply for a school, if that makes sense. And I'm not up to date with the North Carolina requirements now. They may have gotten rid of it, or it still may be there for some of the schools. So I would still take it. So you have that opportunity. And as far as studying before PA school, if you have not heard me this entire time, please listen to me now. Please, please, please. Like, this is the only thing you need to hear. When you get into PA school, because every single one of you is going to get into PA school, when you get into PA school, take a break. And I know, being the type A people that we all are, because I was sitting in your shoes and I was like, I'm going to study. Don't do it. Just please, if you hear nothing else, don't do it. You are going to be given everything you need when you get there. And honestly, you're probably going to study the wrong stuff anyways. You have worked so hard in undergrad. You have worked so hard in all of your prereqs that you continuing to study, you're going to burn yourself out. Trust in the process that everything that you have learned, like, this is not your time before PA school is your time to like reset, refresh, and get your brain into a place where you can go and learn how to take care of another human being. And I promise you, knowing the branches of the brachial plexus is not going to be what makes or breaks you as a clinician. So no, I tried to study for a little bit until somebody like yelled at me, probably a little bit more firm than I am talking to you all, to stop. And I'm so thankful that they did, because truly nothing I was doing was beneficial. And like, you also have to remember, this is a business, like, that you are a PA school's product. So they want their product to look good. They're going to teach you what you need to know. You took the prereqs, you studied for a reason. Give yourself a break before you go. Sorry, I'm on my soapbox, but I feel passionately about it because I was in the same spot, and I wish I would have just let that stress go. So yes, genetics, take it. Study for anatomy before? No. Also, hate to burst any anatomist bubble in here. I have used very minimal anatomy clinically. Like, there are some things that are important, don't get me wrong. And you do need to have a basis of it, but I have not used as much anatomy as I thought I would. Granted, I haven't gone to surgery yet. That's next. So talk to me in a month. But I mean, for the most part, you're not going to use it as much as you think you will. It helps you learning the pathophys, but after that, when you're in clinic, you won't. How was the interview process? So I also have a different opinion on this than most people. The interview process was tough, but also just like super exciting, because at that point you get to talk about what you are so passionate about and what you love, and all of the things that have made you the incredible person that you are to be sitting in a PA school interview. And that's the time that you get to brag on yourself. So every school is going to be different. I can speak to Campbell's process a little bit, where you have a one-on-one interview, a group interview, and that's like they give you a situation that you kind of talk through. And I think that's it, as far as like actual, when they're like scoring you or whatever, is the group situation, and they kind of just watch how you interact with everybody. And then you have a one-on-one interview, but you also get to go on like a tour of the building, and you sit down with a student panel that is completely unrelated to the interview process, so that you can see how Campbell runs and you can ask your questions, and the faculty and the people that are like scoring the interview process have nothing to do with it. So that's kind of how the interview day goes. I will say at Campbell, it's super laid back. Like you are going to feel like you're going to throw up, but like everybody else there is like, hey, welcome to Campbell. Let's talk about you. Let's talk about all the cool things that you did. And it really is like a laid back interview process. Some of the other interviews are a little bit different, a little bit more intense. You'll have like the multiple mini interviews. Those I found very stressful. But as far as how to prep for them, I think the best thing that you can do is take a day or 2 days or whatever and sit down and just write down the things that like have had an impact on you, whether that's medical or not. Write down those big life events that have shaped you and have made you who you are, and kind of keep a running list on them. And then as things come up, you can add to it. Of course, you do want to add a lot of what's clinically relevant and what you've done from a clinical perspective, and so specific things about the PA profession that have shaped you, but you want to get those important life events, important patients, important interactions on paper. And then you kind of have them in front of you. And then as you go through the interview process, you have those tangible examples right in front of you. So I think, remind me if you don't have it, so Caitlin, but I have a list of interview questions that I wrote down at some point, and I can go back in my computer and find it if Caitlin doesn't have it. And just kind of make sure you can talk through them. I never wrote down my answers. I always just kind of would go through, okay, if they ask me why I want to be a PA, I want to make sure I cover this story, and this story. If they ask me what my weakness is, I want to make sure I cover this story and this story. Because I think when you kind of keep it in bullet points of stories that you want to tell, you sound less robotic. They can hear your passion, versus if you go in there and you have this like script that you've written for yourself that you're just trying to regurgitate, and you're like, oh, what was that 4th sentence I wrote down? Like they feel that, and it doesn't seem as genuine and authentic. So take the time, write down those experiences and have them at the forefront of your brain. Bring that paper with you on interview day and kind of read through it. And I think if you have that prepared ahead of time, that is the best thing that you can do. And it will make you the most genuine, and it will allow them to like truly hear your passion and not your nerves and not your rehearsed robotic kind of stuff.
Yes.
How and when did you start studying for the GRE?
Caitlin probably remembers this. So I started studying for the GRE. So, okay, I applied for PA school April of my junior year. I had to think about that. So I started studying for the GRE. I told myself I was going to start studying Christmas before, but I didn't. I didn't start till February, and I ended up taking it at the end of February. So I started at the beginning of February, took it at the end. And I also think I had just like the most life stress going on at that time. So I really didn't study as much as I should have. With that being said, I also knew that my strength has always been math. So I didn't really study for math, but I am horrible with the writing section and the reading section and the grammar, and it's atrocious. It's embarrassing, honestly. But I used Prep Scholar. They have these flashcards that are there's like 3 sets, and one of them is like, these words will be on your GRE, these words could be on your GRE, and these words might be on your GRE, are like the 3 categories. And I really only had time to do these words will be on your GRE, and they absolutely were. So for the vocab writing, I forget I think it's verbal. Is that the proper term for that section now? For that, I just used Prep Scholar and thought that was really helpful. Make sure for like the math section that you kind of look at the different types of questions. And on that Prep Scholar website, they have videos of like the strategies of how to answer the math questions, because some of them aren't necessarily like typical like math, I guess. So Prep Scholar, looking at the math strategy videos. And then I think I took 2 or 3 practice tests from, I want to say it was the GRE website. I have it written down somewhere. So if that would be helpful, I have that written down, and I can send that to Caitlin as well for the websites that I used for practice questions. But just making sure you did the practice questions I don't even remember what I was taking my junior year. I was taking hard classes. So the GRE fell to the back burner and it was fine. So y'all are smart people. I would say know what you're weak in and focus on that. And as long as you get above a 300, move on.
And yeah, I will say when you sign up for the GRE, you automatically get 2 free practice exams. So that is something that is useful. And also, I think on their website too, you can pay $20 and they'll score your writing as well. So you have a ballpark estimate as to where you're at. Are there any more questions in the room? Yes. Does undergraduate research count for clinician hours for PA school?
I will say majority of the time, no. Some schools maybe, but I'm almost positive for the most part, majority they will not. But I would say, even knowing that, I would call the PA schools that you're interested in and say, hey, my name is blah, 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 and I've done this for my clinical research. And I was just wondering if that counts for you guys towards your clinical hours. Most likely they're going to tell you no, but you put your name out there, you show them that you're interested, and then you get your answer. And there might be a school that will take it, and then and hey, they count your hours, but it's also not something that will be necessarily like discounted on your application. So I would say still put it in the CASPA and let the schools proceed how they will with like calculating that. I will say if your clinical research had anything to do with like taking vital signs or a patient history or like directly hands-on working with patients, that might count. But it's all going to be about how you write it up and how you pitch that experience, if that makes sense.
Anything else? No. Oh, yeah.
Sort of like the timeline for like letters of rec, like when you sort of need to ask them and like if they send that.
I didn't hear the last question.
She just asked about the process for letters of rec.
So yes, I asked my letters in January and I was like, hey, like this is what I'm doing. I would always, depending on who you're asking and the relationship you have with them, if you're sending them an email or a text or, I don't know what level of relationship you guys have, but regardless, when you ask somebody to write your letter, you need to say, hi, my name is blah, blah, blah. This is how I know you. I'm applying for PA school. This is what I want to do with it. Like give them anything about why you want to be a PA, like brief couple sentences, and attach your resume or your CV or something, and give them plenty of time. So I think I actually ended up hitting submit in May for my CASPA, but I asked everybody in January and I told them it was due in April. So I gave them plenty of time. Also in that initial email, say, it's due on X date. Is there a way that you would like me to follow up with you? Would you like me to send you reminders? I asked Dr. Sandberg to write one of mine and she had me email her every Friday to remind her. So every Friday from January till April, I sent her an email and I included a picture of my dog because I'm obsessed with her. And I was like, just your weekly reminder, please write my letter of recommendation. And so just making sure you give them plenty of information and give them plenty of time to do so. Also, if you attach like a resume and just general why you want to be a PA, that will go a long way and you'll get a better letter. Also, if you have like a personable relationship with them, it's usually worth it to ask them in person first and ask them, can you write me a strong letter of recommendation? And seeing how they kind of receive that. There is a difference between a good letter and a strong letter or a great letter. So making sure that people that you ask will go above and beyond to rave about you. And so if you're like, hey, can you write me this strong letter of recommendation? They're like, I mean, I can write you one. You might want to find somebody else. So if you can, ask them in person ahead of time. But I asked in January and told them it was due in April and submitted in May.
All right, perfect. Anyone have anything else to say? No? Did you?
Well, yeah, I would like to know sort of what type of specialty or what type of PA she wants to be when she graduates.
Did you hear that, Jada?
Yeah, I want to be a PA that gets a job. So I have always, always, always loved peds. It, from the beginning of time has been something that I've loved, and I did love my peds rotation, but I've honestly surprised myself with how much I've loved everything else. And I think I've seen, just being in clinic, how important your environment is. So if I could get my dream job in peds, that would be awesome. But I would rather work with better people and have a better supervising physician in a different specialty than to go into peds. I loved the PICU. I got to do a rotation in the pediatric ICU, and that was amazing. And women's health was so cool. Delivering babies was like the highlight of my life. So I would say, even me, and I'm sure Caitlin is shocked to hear this, like, I have always been so diehard peds, and I still have loved everything. So I think that's the beauty of being a PA, is that you have that flexibility. So stay tuned. It's going to be where I get a good job. And then after applying, how long before you found out if you got in? Okay, so I hit submit in May, and then I think I got an email about my first interview in July. And then I was getting emails for interviews July through September. And I think every school was a little bit different, but it was typically you would have an interview about a month after the initial, we would like to interview you. Almost all of the schools that I interviewed at, they will call you within 2 days, 3 days, maybe a week max. I know Methodist called the next day. ECU was the next week. Campbell would be, you usually will interview on a Friday, you'll know on Monday. So after you interview, it's pretty soon after that you'll know. And then you have, depending on the school, you have either 14 to 28 days to hold your spot. So they're like, hey, you're accepted. And then they say you have to put down X deposit to hold your seat. If you don't do so within the next 14 to 28 days, depending on the school, then you lose your spot. So that was kind of the interview to getting in process. And then tips on personal statements. Personal statements are hard. I think that's one of the hardest parts of the application. And even now I'm writing my CV for jobs, and I'm forgot how much I hate writing about myself. So definitely just know that's tough. And giving yourself plenty of time. So similar to the whole process of preparing for the interview, do the same thing with your personal statement. And that can be a little bit less specific for the personal statement. Just start writing down the patients, the people, the experiences that have made you who you are. And as you kind of write that, walk away from it. So write everything down, walk away from it. And then over the next couple of days, keep adding to it, and kind of just be aware of in your head, the experiences that keep coming back to you or that keep standing out to you. Because something that you wrote down, some experience that you had, is going to just keep coming back. And that's probably what you need to write about. I would say definitely go online and read people's personal statements, because if you start your personal statement, when I was 5 years old, I knew I wanted to be a PA. They have read that 15,000 times and it's not original. Or I was so deathly sick and a PA saved my life. Those things they've read before. And even if that's your story, write it, but don't start it that way. You want to make sure that yours is different and do something to make it so that it is not a copy and paste of what they've read before. So reading personal statements, not necessarily to get ideas, but more so to get ideas of what's the cliches, what has everybody seen. I'm trying to go back. Make sure you don't ever talk poorly about another profession. Ever, 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 never. Even if you're I don't want to be a doctor because I don't want XYZ, don't say it. So never do that. Never call it a physician's assistant. If you put the apostrophe S, your applications are automatically discontinued. And I would say I've heard mixed reviews on this, but there are some admissions people that do not want to read that PAs have more time with their patients than MDs. So I would just avoid that statement in general, because while sometimes it may be true, it's not always true. And then some people will take that as you don't know enough about the profession, and that will be reflected poorly on you. So knowing the things that you probably just should leave out is also helpful. So I hope that helps.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I know that you said that you couldn't spend too much time, but you have done a fabulous job, and I appreciate you coming very much. So thank you.
Do you want to send out my email, or you want me to put my email in the chat? What would be the most helpful?
I can just send it out tomorrow because I usually do a recap email. So I think it would just be the easiest way.
Yeah, send my email.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming and talking with us.
Yes, you're so welcome. Literally, guys, if you need anything, I might be slow to respond, but like, you are all welcome to email me. I am happy to chat with any of you. Just know that it might take me a minute, but I'm so happy to talk to any of you. So anything you guys need, and hopefully here in 6 months, I can get a job, and then in another 6, y'all can come shadow.
All right. Well, thank you again, and good luck with your exam on Friday.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye, y'all. Good luck.
Bye. All right. So I hope that was helpful for everyone. The only thing that we had to do left to discuss today is just about officer elections. So I'm graduating this semester, as are Cassidy and Caroline. So we're going to have some positions available. And what we're thinking as to how this is going to work is that for the next 2 or 3 weeks, I believe, if any of you want to be an officer, just send me a little paragraph like about yourself and then about why you want to run. And then I'm going to collect all of those answers, and I'm going to send them out in a Google Doc. And then people will have 2 weeks to vote on whose answer they like the best. And then from there, at our last meeting, I'll announce who the new officers are. All right. So if it would be beneficial to hear a little bit about each position, I'm definitely going to send a description tomorrow in my follow-up email. But you guys can come on up and speak about what you do.
So I'm the pre-nursing president right now. So basically, my role is just to kind of organize nursing meetings. That means kind of communicating with different nursing programs, or even wherever, it's just whoever you want to reach out to, and asking them to present to our club, or getting nursing students or actual nurses to come and talk about their roles, programs going, whatever you can do. Just sort of organizing those meetings. I also help out with relaying information to students. So if the nursing students come to me with questions, I answer them to the best of my ability. I help the PA president and the secretary with sort of organizing their events, and we just all work together.
Just to harp on what she said, we really all just work together in planning meetings and gathering our resources together. So that's something you guys should look for when you're reading those paragraphs. It's like, who has a patient care job that you would like to learn more about, or who do you think has good resources that they could bring to the club? But as treasurer / secretary, I mostly just get club dues, manage the finances and the bank accounts, post the giveaways, and get like snacks and supplies for meetings. So like next meeting, we're going to be doing the suture workshop. So we'll be providing suture kits to everybody. So I'll be ordering those. Yeah, that's about it for this position.
All right. So those are the positions that we have available. So I will send out an email, like I said, tomorrow, just recapping everything that we went over today, as well as the descriptions about the positions. And I look forward to your answers. Are there any questions that you have that I can help answer? Yes.
Could you share a little bit about what the High Point trip is like?
Oh, yeah. So we're gonna go, I think the tour is set for 4 p.m. So we'll leave here around 2:30-ish. And we can all gather at Cali or have some meet up point. Because I know a couple people need rides, so at least I can drive people. I think it's about an hour and a half drive there or something like that. And then once we're there, they're gonna give us a brief presentation about the overview of their specific PA program. And from there, we're gonna get to tour all their facilities and everything like that. So you can ask questions on the way and just see what it's like for a real PA school to actually be in one and everything. And then from there, if you drove yourself, you can leave kind of whenever, like it's up to you. But we'll also come straight back.
when Jada was president, my sophomore year, she coordinated a Campbell trip and I went on that. Did you know?
No, I wasn't.
It was really, really helpful just to like, that was my first time stepping in a PA school. And now looking back, all my interviews were virtual. Well, Campbell's at least was. So having to already gotten to see the facilities was really helpful. So if you guys are free to go, it's a great opportunity. It'll probably just be this group, like just NC State students, and they'll be spending time answering any questions. So I would take the opportunity if you have it.
Yeah, it definitely is just our club that's going. So it will not be one-on-one, but it'll just be like our students, our club, and the faculty there. So I recommend going. And I think she said the tour would only last like 45 minutes. So we're not staying like for a long period of time, but we thought that if we left at like 2:30, it would be after people's morning classes at least. So hopefully more people could be able to come. Any other questions? No? All right. Well, thank you all for coming very much. And I will either see you next at the tour or at our final meeting. All right. Have a great day.
And if you haven't picked up about anything,